Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to First Financial's Financial Wellness First Wednesdays. Tonight, I want to thank everyone for viewing this webinar. And also, I want to thank all of our panelists for attending tonight. You can go to the next slide, please. So tonight's HR panel discussion will be regarding the topic of obtaining and maintaining jobs during a pandemic. So we will be here until about 7:30, and this is a sponsored event by First Financial Federal Credit Union. First, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Joey Atkinson. I am a human resources generalist at First Financial. I worked for First Financial going on 7 years. I have worked in human resources for about 4.5, maybe a little longer. Being a generalist, I kind of have my hands in a lot of different projects and assignments. So it's all across the board in HR. But I'm excited to get to know our 4 panelists tonight. So first we will start with Joe Gonzales from Robert Half. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Hey, Joey. How are you? Good evening.
Good evening. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Joe Gonzales. I'm a regional vice president with Robert Half. I've been with the company for a little over 18 years. I'm responsible essentially for our professional staffing services across the state of Maryland, and just excited to be part of this tonight.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, our next panelist is Cyndi Goodman. Hi, Cyndi. How are you?
How are you, Joey?
I'm well, thank you.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Cyndi Goodman, and I am the Director of Talent Acquisition for Lutheran Social Ministries of Maryland. We actually have 2 communities. We have the Carroll Lutheran Village, which is located in the Westminster, Maryland area, and then we have the Lutheran Village Miller's Grant, which is located in the Ellicott City area. So we operate out of 2 communities for care and support of our older adults. So thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. And then next we have Angela McConaughy. Hi, Angela, how are you?
Joey, I'm just fine. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. My name is Angela McConaughy. I am a Human Resources Coordinator at Wallace, Montgomery and Associates. I am one of a 2-member HR team. So I am essentially the right hand of our Human Resources Director, do everything from the life cycle of the employee, from orientation to benefits administration. And we are an engineering firm that works in the Mid-Atlantic area. We do a lot of infrastructure. So when you're seeing construction on 95, we're probably pretty involved in that design. So you're welcome for all that.
Thank you. I always see construction on 95, so now I'll think of you. And then last but not least, we have Shakeesha Smith. Hi, Shakeesha. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So thanks for having me. My name is Shakeesha Smith, and I'm HR Supervisor with Baltimore County Public Schools. I've been employed with the Baltimore County Public School System since the fall of 2016. Started as an HR analyst and promoted a year ago to the HR Supervisor position. So within the school system, it's definitely opportunities for growth for those who are seeking employment. We are still hiring for various positions. And I'm one of 2 supervisors on the non-certificated staffing team. So we oversee the work together. We oversee the work of 6 HR analysts who are responsible for hiring everything from temporary employees to substitutes to office professionals and other support positions across the county.
Great. That's really great to hear you guys are still hiring during this time. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much again for being here. We're so excited. We'll get started. So we'll start with our first question. The first question, I'm going to ask all of you the same question. We'll go in the order that you were introduced. So we'll start with Joe and then end with Shakeesha, okay? The first question I have is, what is one piece of advice you would give to those looking for a job right now?
I'd say be positive. there's there's still a lot of companies who are very active in hiring, and along those lines, I think try to find a company that matches up to kind of your core values. Be able to look at a company and kind of find out who they are now through the pandemic and who they plan on being when we're finally out of this. I think that would be my best advice for you right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Cyndi?
Yes, I would definitely say with the competition that's out now, so many people are looking for an employment opportunity. Once you get that interview, I would definitely highlight any skills or qualifications that would make you stand out from your competitor, so to speak, or the next candidate that's vying for the same position. And at Lutheran Social Ministries of Maryland, we are aggressively hiring. So for any candidates that are listening tonight, if you have a medical background, if you have a food and hospitality background, or even just a general clerical administrative background, we're definitely hiring. So, if you can land that interview, focus on your strengths and make the most out of your interview, and hopefully you'll be selected as a candidate.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Angela?
I think I would have to say patience is probably going to be key. A lot of companies are trying to figure themselves out also in this time as they are trying to forecast for the future, and not as willing to go through as much growth maybe, as that's kind of a big risk in a very uncertain time. So patience and diligence and not losing hope and still continuing to just put yourself out there, even though it can be really defeating or feel negative. It's always a positive to be out there and trying.
Great. And then Chekesha?
Sure. So my recommendation would be to do some research, because there are a lot of companies that are still hiring throughout the pandemic. And also, if you need assistance with your job search, reach out to some agencies within the community that assist with job placement, so they could possibly put you in contact with some organizations that are hiring, and participate in some virtual information sessions or virtual events that may be occurring throughout the community.
Yeah, that's great. That was all great advice, you guys. Thank you so much. I think too, like during this time, this is almost like a reset for a lot of people, where they can kind of focus on, maybe before it's not what they wanted to do, and now they can kind of focus on specific skill sets that they have that they want to like go forward in with the future. So it's great. All right, so my next question is going to be specifically for Angela. So Angela, a lot of new job seekers, they hear advice saying, make a good first impression. What are some things that impress you in interviews?
So there are all of the very obvious ones: timeliness, professional appearance, respectfulness, all of the obvious ones. But I would also say recently, especially, I've noticed that there is a standout difference between candidates who have done research on our firm and already know. I mean, some candidates are coming to me asking about projects that I can't even answer because I'm not an engineer. So if you know the company that you're going out for, that goes a long, long way. And just practice. There are some very basic questions that a lot of HR interviewers are asking. And having those answers down pat will help you.
Yes, I completely agree. I think researching a job is one of the best things an interviewee can do, because you're not the only person being interviewed, you're also interviewing the company, which I think a lot of people forget.
Yeah.
Great. And then next, I have a question for Chekesha. So what are immediate deal breakers in interviews for you?
Sure. So for me, I'm interested in hiring individuals who are not only qualified to do the job, but also individuals who appear to be very professional in their work and have the ability to represent the entire organization in a professional manner. So one of the immediate deal breakers for me would be showing up to an interview late and not being prepared, because that could be perceived as this is what you're going to do if you're potentially offered the position. So you have to be timely And as Angela said, do some research prior to your interview, research the company. I mean, most companies have websites where you can even look into the position that you applied for and possibly reach out to that department to see if there's any additional information that could be provided. Some of the other downfalls in interviews could be the lack of enthusiasm, because we want to make sure that we're bringing individuals in who are actually interested in the job that they're applying for and not just applying for any position that's available. So we want to bring in individuals who are able to connect and actually relate to the work. And then just another downfall, it's not an immediate deal breaker, but just providing brief responses in the interview responses. So it doesn't allow an opportunity for the interviewer or the panel to properly assess your skill set. So that's kind of a downfall, because we have to be given enough information to be able to make a clear and informed decision.
Yes, those are all really good points. And I think too, timeliness, I think, is one of the main things, because that's your first initial interaction with somebody. When we do interviews, if they're not 5 minutes early, sometimes my first thought is, are they a no-show? And then if they're a couple minutes late and they have no explanation, it's kind of like, oh, you're gonna ignore that. But
Right.
And my next question is for Joe. So please give job seeking advice for those who are switching careers or are interested in trying something new, whether by choice or by necessity. So for example, a restaurant owner had to close his business and now needs to find a new career.
Yep, and I mean, we're seeing so much of that in 9-month period already. I would say, really, again, the homework, do some research. I think that's going to be key for everything, right? But I think really focus on your transferable skills, your soft skills. I think there's so much to go on, and I think some of us are still getting very used to this virtual environment. But I think hiring managers, no matter what the field is, they want to know that they can work with someone who can communicate well and can fit into the culture of their organization. I think you really, there's not one size that fits all out there. A lot of times it's just the right person fits the right opportunity for a company. It's do some homework. LinkedIn is a great way to maybe connect with people who are doing something already that you're interested in. Maybe a quick message and a chance to learn a little bit more and interview them a little bit. Just we've seen some really cool transitions for people in jobs that they had and kind of what they're doing. It's a little more of a passion for them now. So it's I definitely focus on how you can get to the next step.
Right, and I think people are getting really creative with what jobs they want, and seeing what's out there. They're realizing, oh, there's so many new opportunities that there maybe weren't a year ago. And like you said, with LinkedIn, I think any young professional coming in, or even older professional, go get a LinkedIn account. This is the best way to network as of now, because I didn't go on LinkedIn for about 10 days. I went on and I had 20 plus new people that, are in my realm of business. And I thought, oh, wow. And they're messaging me, hi, we went to the same school, or, we work in the same career field. And I think that's really neat. And it's a really neat opportunity that I did not see before. Well, thank you. And then Cyndi, my question for you is, with so many people out of work, is there room for negotiation on salary and benefit packages? Why or why not?
So, I can speak for our current company. While we do offer salary that is commensurate upon their experience, their overall experience, we found that even in a pandemic, we are able to be very competitive in the marketplace with salary, as well as negotiate salary. We have the ability to select the best candidate, especially with the needs that we have when you're looking at the medical professional environment, where the need is greatest, with RNs and LPNs. So we are able to be very competitive and negotiate salary, and even offer a sign-on bonus because the need is so great. So we are pretty fortunate right now to be able to do that, and hopefully other employers are as well.
Right. I do think it does depend on the company or field or even the job, because if you need a manager position, you're not going to offer somebody lower than what they're making currently. You're going to be competitive with it. I feel like that's still in place across the board, but that's nice that you guys are still doing that for
Sure.
everything. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to Angela. My question for you is, what tips would you give to employees who may be losing confidence in their employer or wondering if their job is safe?
That's such a hard one.
I know, sorry.
To me, that one is a very company specific answer.
Mhm,
So I'm going to give you the answer that I would give for myself or for someone in
mhm,
my firm.
mhm,
And that is to just have honest conversations wherever possible.
mhm,
I mean, I'm in a firm where if I were to go to my director or to even one of the partners and say, I'm really concerned about Wallace in this time period, what does our forecast look like? Do we have enough backlog to support our engineers for the next 6 months even?
mhm.
They would come back at me with answers depending on who you're asking. Some will be
Right.
more honest and clear cut than others. But in my experience, people have found, or I'm sorry, when I ask questions like that, they're more intrigued and appreciative of me taking interest in the company and actually being concerned over the status of the firm, and trying to see what I can do or if there's any way to assist from the position that I'm in. So to get the answers that you want, you kind of got to ask the hard questions. And in this case, I think just having honest and open conversations about your concerns and asking for feedback from the people who really have a true answer to the question is going to be beneficial.
I think that's a really great answer. I think that's very true.
Hey, thanks.
You're welcome. Right, and then thank you. And then for Shakeesha, my question for you, can you share any advice for employees struggling to stay productive while working remote?
Sure. So the first piece of advice or recommendation would be to talk to your supervisor. Inform your supervisor of some of the challenges that you're facing while working remotely. Have an open and honest conversation and ask for suggestions. I mean, depending on your role with the organization, there may be opportunities for some flexibility in scheduling, possibly your break times and or your lunch times could be adjusted or moved to the time of day when you begin to feel disengaged. Social interaction is very important. So we all want to have that face-to-face dialogue with our colleagues and other individuals. But the reality is in the virtual environment, a lot of us are working at home in our individual space. So we don't have that face-to-face. So things like virtual discussions, talking more over the phone as opposed to sending an email may be helpful. It's just a way for you to still be able to connect. And I think most importantly, you have to be mindful of yourself and being sure that you maintain a healthy work-life balance. Because I realize I'm working remotely myself, and I realize that I have to set boundaries. I have to know my start and end times. I have to know, okay, it's time to shut down work because the work can get in the way of your personal space. So you just have to find that right balance. And then also, depending on the organization, maybe reach out to the human resources department to find out if there are any trainings or wellness initiatives that you could possibly participate in and be a part of to give you some of those tools to be able to adapt to this new way of working. So those would be my recommendations.
Yeah, that's great. And I think so many people are going through that. And that's such a great answer, because staying connected, I feel like, is so important right now, because everyone's kind of stuck in this routine of being alone and trying to get a schedule together where they feel that they're still connected, but it's hard. Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right, the next one is for Cyndi. How do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the hiring process? And do you see it going back to the way it was before the pandemic?
It's a very great question. And, who would have thought that, such an unfortunate pandemic would have come and still be going. And it has absolutely changed for a lot of employers, the way that they're interviewing. You know, while we want to stay ahead of the times in terms of looking at creative ways to interview, you know, you have artificial intelligence, you have remote, you have virtualization. You know, it has definitely changed, and a lot of employers are only strictly doing the virtual interviews, the Zoom sessions, the Teams interviewing. And, you know, I honestly don't see that it's going to go back to what we used to call the norm, where you were okay with shaking hands when you greeted that potential employer who you hope would become your employer. So, you know, it's tough times, but I feel that we have to adjust, and we have to get through. And individuals that are currently out there looking for an opportunity, hopefully they do have the resources with the electronic devices and such, that they can connect with employers virtually to make a seamless transition in their next career opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And you use the word adapt, which I think is really good, because right now, I mean, it's crazy how we all adapted to everything that happened. And I mean, we still make everything work, and we still try to figure everything out. And it's kind of amazing.
Absolutely.
All right. And then my next question is for Joe. How are furloughs perceived on a resume when people are applying for employment?
You know, I don't really foresee it being a negative, where it's, if there's one commonality right now, is everybody's going through the same thing. So it's far more understandable. You know, we went through a tough recession years and years ago, and people, we understood it was, we know what's happening out there. It doesn't, a furlough doesn't dictate how good somebody is as an employee, or how talented or skilled, or, you know, in many cases, companies were hit really hard and had to furlough. Some didn't even have the option to furlough. And, you know, so I think everything's very explainable. It's in so many ways an attempt to keep a connection to their employees. This happened faster than anyone was ever used to anything coming. And, you know, furlough might've been even knee jerk in some ways to say, like, all right, we have to do this. And then we'll figure it out when we know what April will bring or May will bring. So I don't think it's going to be a negative. I think, you know, to your point earlier, Joey, it's given people in a lot of cases a chance to stop for a minute and think about where they were in their career, and kind of look at other options as well. But to the initial question, I don't think it's going to be a negative at all. I think it's really understood what everybody's been working through.
That's great to hear. And I feel like that probably is like relieving for some people, because I think before it was perceived differently than it's going to be perceived in the future as of now. So that's great. All right. So the next couple questions I'm going to ask to everyone. And then for the last about 10-15 minutes, I see some questions coming in through the chat, and we'll get those answered. Okay. So the next question I have is for everyone. And again, we'll go in order from Joe to Chekesha. So with so many companies doing interviews remotely now, please give us your best advice for remote interviews.
I keep it simple. Practice. It's honestly, it really just practice. Even if you're video interviewing with a friend or you know, a colleague, or if you're in between jobs, get on a video and practice. So many people had no experience doing this other than maybe like FaceTiming their family. And now this is literally how we see everybody so often. Just practice.
That's great advice. I feel like that should have been taken to before. But yes. Okay, next, Cyndi.
Yes, I would say act as if you were literally in front of the person in person, you know, and what I mean by that is make sure you're prepared. Check your electronic device before you click on that link to Zoom in or to join in with Teams, to make sure that your camera's working, that your electronic device is situated properly, that your microphone works. Come prepared with questions. And certainly you want to make sure that you're in a quiet area where you're not disturbed. And lastly, I think that it would be helpful just to make sure that you have your game face on. And even if that includes putting on a nice blouse or a nice dress shirt, just act as if you're on an in-person interview. And I think it would go over very well.
Yeah, that's great. And I don't think, like you said, being prepared, I don't think being over prepared is a bad thing. People ask, how many questions should I go with? Go with 25. Like there's no, you can research as much as you want into the company. Go back to when they first opened. Know everything you can.
Right.
That's great. Okay, Angela?
I think this one I'm going to piggyback off of Cyndi quite a bit because I would just encourage to stay formal. It's so easy when we are sitting in our own home, or especially when we're even used to remote working now and we're in our PJs when we log on and we just put on that blouse for a meeting. It's just, don't forget the formality of it. Remember what's behind you, around you, who else is in the house, people walking behind you or in and out loud squeaky doors kind of a thing. And then just, I've found that during interviews remotely, since we are more comfortable in our own space, that the conversation can become more casual and more personal. And then just remembering that you are still on an interview and trying to keep that level of professionalism is almost hard, even though you are in an interview.
That's good advice. I do think people do forget that sometimes. Thank you. And Chekesha?
So I definitely agree with everything that was already shared. One piece of advice that I would like to add or offer would be to try to take a few minutes prior to the actual start of the interview to take a breath. Take a breath, try to relax, because it is a new environment and it's a new space for the interview process. And typically a lot of individuals come into interviews and they're already nervous. So if you take 5 minutes just to breathe and relax prior to actually logging into that actual interview, it may help you get your thoughts and everything together in advance. So, but I definitely do agree with coming dressed professionally. And also be mindful of your background. Sometimes you may have things on the wall or things going on in the background that could be distracting in the interview process. So try to keep things simple.
That's really good advice. For us at First Financial, I think we are back in the office. So we've had a couple interviews that have happened in the office since we've been back, which I think has been a real shift for people. So when we tell them that, they're kind of like, what? Like, I feel like they probably have a moment of, what? I've been practicing so much doing it virtually, wait. And I mean, we have, guidelines that we follow and safety precautions. So when they come in, they're like, oh, okay, because we have a new location and it's very open. So they come in, they're like, okay, I'm 6 feet away. Everything's wiped down. I have hand sanitizer available, mask on. Okay, great. And they feel comfortable once they get there, but I feel like it's kind of a shock for everyone. All right. So next question I'll ask for everybody is, what programs has your company implemented to assist current employees with mental anxiety or financial stress during this time? And we'll start with Joe, and then we'll go.
We've really leveraged kind of all the benefits packages we've had in place in employee assistance. We've worked with the companies that we partner with to offer more webinars on financial security, things like that. Just down to building, kind of to earlier, like teams groups and building kind of groups of people, just offering up times to get together and network a little bit more. We're a global organization, and it's interesting to talk to people in different markets that are all feeling the same thing. And just knowing, I think, to create some connectivity, to know you're not alone. We're all at home. You could feel like you're out on an island. I think we've just tried to message that out. And I think lastly, we've really talked to people about utilizing their time off. It's been, I'm sure everybody is like, yeah, where do I go with my time off? It's like, just allow yourself to shut down. And so those are some of the areas we've really kind of focused and honed in on with the group to try to just help get people through.
That's great. That's really important. So next we'll go to Cyndi.
Okay, thank you. We actually have implemented weekly COVID meetings where, and for us, it's really necessary, again, because of our environment. I mean, I'm sure all organizations it's necessary, but we implement weekly COVID meetings to discuss the matters at hand, to discuss, you know, the mental state of our employees, you know, their concerns. What are we doing to remain safe and take precautionary measures without health check-ins, you know, at the front entrance, things of that nature. And then also we have instituted a reserve PTO bank that we are rolling out for our employees to take advantage of as well for individuals who need that extra time off. So those are some of the things that we've implemented. And we have a fitness center on site. So for those that want to relax a little and kind of take away some of the stress of it all, they can schedule an appointment because we have to limit the number of individuals there for our employees. And that's going well also. So we've implemented a few things that are working out pretty well.
That's great. And like I said earlier, First Financial moved locations for their admin center. So when we started for the pandemic, we were in our old location, but then we went back around June. We had our new location and we have a fitness center now as well. And I use it probably 4 days out of the week during my lunch break just to like, you know, it's just a nice like middle of the day, like, whew, and I like, woosah, because I kind of need it with everything going on. So yeah, that's great to hear.
Good.
And then Angela?
So we have an employee assistance program that is anonymous and free to the employee that we have had for years. But we've also just leveraged awareness of it and pushing it out and making sure that everybody has easy access and knows it's there. But we also were looking at contributions for the 2021 benefit packages. And we're also doing all kinds of wellness. We have virtual yoga that you can participate in, as well as other wellness games that are just virtual, and you can like team up to create paintings if you want to essentially do color by painting to just breathe and focus on something that's nothing for a little bit, or the fun fitness challenges with tracking steps and wonderful things like that. So a lot of it is just trying to figure out how to get everybody involved together. And like you were saying, preferably doing something active, since it's so easy to be on the couch, is really where we're focusing right now, is rolling out wellness programs.
That's great. Yeah, like being creative, I think is the biggest thing with that. And you're seeing so many new things. It's awesome. I mean, First Financial is doing stuff like this, which is great. And this is something new. Never did before, so that's great. And then Chekesha?
Sure. So for Baltimore County Public Schools, we do have a wellness program. So there are a lot of wellness initiatives that employees are able to participate in. We also have an employee assistance program where for individuals struggling or need some additional assistance or possibly counseling sessions, that benefit is available to our entire workforce as a benefit free of charge. And then of course, we've implemented a lot of safety measures to ensure that individuals entering the buildings on a limited capacity, you know, so that they have that comfort in knowing that the CDC guidelines are followed for those employees who are essential and or essential as needed and as a requirement of their position that they have to enter a building.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's good. That's great to hear. I mean, these are all really good answers, and it's all nice because it's all kind of like a little bit different because you all have different careers, and it's nice to just kind of see what everyone's doing. And I feel like right now I'm overloaded every day with emails of like different webinars about wellness or like mental health for your employees. And I know that all departments are having a shift with everything going on. And we kind of just focus on like what's happening within our direct view because I mean, HR, I remember so many rules were changing and regulations and policies and, you know, requirements to wear masks, not wear masks. You know, we have branch employees that have been member facing for the entire time. So we were trying to make sure they were taken care of while other employees were at home, but then some were in the office, and it was just a lot of managing and trying to be creative and getting a hold of everything. But it's nice to hear everybody's story and experience with everything. All right. So you guys went through all my questions, which were great. All my answers are answered. So we'll start going through, it looks like we have a lot of questions within the chat. So we'll go from there, okay? And I'll ask everyone this question. You guys can kind of bounce off each other with your answers. So the first question I have is, I've heard many recently that HR professionals don't really read cover letters. How necessary are they? We'll start with Joe.
I think they're still important. They still kind of open things up a little bit. I mean, it's different when it's coming through now more electronically than ever, but I think it does set the tone of you know who the candidate is and kind of what their focus is more than anything.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think just having that effort there that you did the work for the cover letter and not copying and pasting the same one over and over again also helps. Next, we'll go to Cyndi.
Yeah, I think that cover letters are an absolutely great attribute of a candidate. If someone's taking the time to give a brief synopsis of their overall career in a cover letter, I think that for me, it goes a long way in terms of, you know, what type of candidate this is going to be. So I definitely applaud individuals that that produce a cover letter, especially a well-written one also. So I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Angela?
So I am a little shifting of that opinion. I think that cover letters are helpful if I'm trying to decide between certain candidates. I think it's a great addition. But generally speaking, I am going to go to that resume first to look and see if they do have the qualifications. And the cover letter, I appreciate that it's done and it does speak volumes about the candidate. But at the same time, if that experience isn't on the resume, then I'm not going to go back and read that cover letter, just as an honest answer. So I do think it is good to have, and it's a good skill to be able to leverage or utilize. But in my case, it's not as important as the resume itself.
No, I can see that as well. And I think too, let's say you get 200 resumes and cover letters, it's going to be hard to read every single one of them. So you might narrow it down based off resumes. And when you have the final 3, then maybe the cover letters will come in.
Right.
Okay. And then Chekesha?
Sure. So I'm with Angela on that response. The resume is definitely, in my opinion, most important. But the cover letter, it does add value to the candidate because sometimes there's more information on the cover letter that the resume may not necessarily speak to. So sometimes it gives us just a bit more information or insight into the individual as opposed to the formally written resume. So I do think that they add value. But depending on the position that you're looking for, sometimes I feel as though they're necessary and sometimes I feel as though they're not. Like, I'll give you an example. If it's someone applying for a position that's along the lines of a trade position, I'm not necessarily looking for a well-written cover letter because typically that individual probably has attended a trade school and isn't applying for a position that would require a certain level of writing skill. But then for office professionals and some of the higher level executive and professional positions, it's almost an absolute necessary to have that cover letter that's well written.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. All right, and our next question, again, we'll ask everyone in the same order. So how important is higher education or training versus life or work experience? I think this is a very good question. I think before pandemic, after pandemic, this is, I think a lot of people have this question. Mr. Joe?
So I think it depends on the position. Very, quite honestly, I think there's there's plenty of people that maybe don't have certain levels of education that could still function very well in certain jobs. But I think anyone who's, done hiring over the years, there's times where it's really specific to the opportunity. And that's kind of, thinking about what we do and all the different types of positions we fill. There's absolutely roles that you have to have a CPA. It says you have to have that certification to be qualified for a job. So I think there's plenty of opportunity early in stages of jobs, or maybe a little more entry level. But as you path up, that those requirements get much more particular.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Cyndi?
Yes, thank you. I absolutely agree. There are varying levels of education as well as certifications that may be required for a particular position. So it will absolutely depend on the role, the responsibilities that the company is offering in that position to determine what level of education and or certifications are needed to make the best decision on that candidate.
I agree. Thank you. And then Angela?
I feel like we're all going to agree across the board on this one.
I know they're all yes, but like it's true though.
It is. We are an engineering firm. If you're looking to be an engineer in our firm, you have to have that 4-year education. And not only that, you have to be pursuing your engineering and training certificate and then your licensure as a professional engineer. But as I started at Wallace as a receptionist, and I worked for my bachelor's while working full-time there. So I think what you will find too is companies that want you to have that kind of an education. If you can get a foot in the door, then you're more probable to be helped along that path. But I think in terms of having it to start with, it really depends on what you're looking to do or be.
Yeah. And then Chekesha?
Sure. So my answer would be the same as everyone else. For me, it's dependent upon the position that you're applying for. I mean, we do have several entry-level positions where experience and education is preferred. So depending upon what your interests are and what you want to do, sometimes the education level and experience is required and sometimes it's not. So just pay close attention to the position requirements when you go to apply for jobs, and just review that information and be sure that you meet the minimum requirements of the position.
Yeah, I agree. And I graduated college a couple years ago, and I remember leaving college thinking, I have my education now, I can do whatever I want, like nobody can tell me different. And you kind of realize, oh, you do need a balance of education and experience, because I feel like a lot of people come out with getting a degree and think, I know it all. And you kind of get, when you go to your first interview, you're like, oh wait, there's a lot more to this than what I learned in my management class in chapter 2. So I definitely think it is a good mix, but depending on the position and the role is definitely major. Okay. Our next question is, several folks I know have had pay decreases. How do you communicate these types of issues to your staff and still keep a positive culture? That's a good question. Joe?
I would take it back to something that Angela said earlier, and that's be direct and honest. Mm-hmm. I think, now more than ever, even I know with our company, but just in general, the level of honesty and just genuine conversations that have gone on, there could be a very, very good reason that financially it's going backwards, right? And many people have had bonuses cut, base salaries slowed down. Maybe their job has been retained because they've been cut down hours, but they still have their job. There's usually a really good reason behind it. And that, I think, needs to be really verbalized very, very well, mm-hmm. and with great levels of empathy, because all of this was just such a kick in the gut to everybody that it was like, well, this is happening. And by the way, this is happening. Oh, but let me tell you about this, but let me tell you why. And I think that's really, really, really just the key to it is don't leave people guessing as to why something had to take place, and be very, very open and quiet to hear their response and give them time to really, get their head around it and ask additional questions.
Right. I think that's a good answer. I think with empathy and communication, because nobody wants to do this, and like no person, like a manager or HR doesn't want to have this happen. But I think people realizing that they're not alone in this, because this is happening for so many people, is a big thing to remember. And also that like it's not only you, because I keep hearing people say, you know, my life has changed so much. My life is, and I'm like, everyone's life has changed so much. Everyone is going through this, and it's really hard. But I mean, we're gonna get through it, and I mean, it's the best we can do.
Yeah.
All right, Cyndi.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it is definitely a very tough time, and I'm absolutely agreeing with Joe. You know, you have to be extremely transparent and honest with your employees, and just let them know exactly what's going on as best you can. With our particular company, we're just the opposite. As I mentioned, we gave increases across the board to every single employee, and we're offering sign-on bonuses. So we're kind of a little different, just because of the need. Right now, it's a medical institution, and we need people like there's no tomorrow. So we have the liberty, if you will, to be a little generous with salaries, and we're not decreasing. We're actually, trying to find ways to retain our employees by offering, monetary bonuses and things of that nature. But if you're working for an organization where it is on the unfortunate end, where you have to make cuts and decreases and things of that nature, just be as open and honest as you possibly can with your employees. I think that would go a lot, go over better than, if you were just not as forthright with them as you should have been.
That's great. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that there's still companies, especially in the healthcare, that are still doing everything that you guys are doing. So that's really nice to hear. Thank you. And Angela?
I'm going to again stick to the honesty and transparency train. I just, especially piggybacking on something that Joe said, in the there are alternative options to pay decreases. We had a team that we did have to pull back everybody by a day a week, but all of that team kept their job, kind of a thing. So having that honest conversation about, this is what I was asked to do and this is how I resolved that situation, kind of gives a better perspective and allows the whole team to understand what a hard choice it was for you and how you were working for them. And then I just offering whatever assistance I can as an HR coordinator. If that pay cut means that you need to now go look for another job, what references do you need? Do you need evidence of your work, kind of a thing? What can I as HR do? Because this is not something that we wanted to do or that we really had a choice on. So just trying to be there as much as we can, even though we're kind of giving negative news.
Right. I think that's good. Like, what can HR do is a really good question, because we are there for the employees.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Chekesha?
Sure. So I think communication is very important. Of course, as everyone else said, the transparency, but I think one thing that may make the conversation flow a little easier is to provide advance notice if and when possible. Because I think a lot of organizations, they know in advance when they're approaching budget shortfalls. So I think if employees are given a bit of information so that they can process it, and then maybe a few weeks later, a little bit more information. So that way, when they receive the information that's telling them, okay, we now have to implement this, or we now have to roll this out, they're kind of already expecting it. And then they've also had time to prepare for it. So I think the communication piece would go a long way. We've not experienced that, in my knowledge, with Baltimore County Public Schools. I mean, we were all issued across the board a cost of living adjustment this past July. So fortunately, with the school system, we're not in that situation. But if I were required to have that conversation with my staff, I would approach it with open communication and honesty.
Yeah, that's great. I think too, making like the communication a process so it's not so much of a shock when they finally get like the final answer is really smart. All right, we have about 9 minutes left, so we'll go through maybe like 2 more questions and then we will close everything, okay? The next question, are there any particular new questions you ask candidates because of the pandemic or that relate to the pandemic? For example, looking for new experience working remotely given current conditions? That's a good question. Thank you, Tessa. We'll start with Joe.
They're probably just add-ons to, I think it's almost conversational in some ways of, how's the transition been? Have you, had you done this before? Because some people have been home forever, right? Like, this was in 18 years with the company. This is the first 9 months I haven't seen the office, and it took some getting used to. And, I think it's just little things like that, learning a little bit more about their independence, how they found themselves transitioning and getting more comfortable with it. Because I think a lot of jobs are going to be hybrid after this. I think there's going to be a lot more work from home. I think people have learned a lot.
I hear a lot of that happening now. I hear people saying, if the company is maybe smaller, they've realized they're saving money on rent, and this might be the new way for the future. So it's very true. Thank you, Cyndi.
Yeah, so for our organization, it's a little bit different because none of the positions are remote. So they're all still, coming into the facility. So some of the questions that we ask would be, how comfortable are you working, in the facility with this type of situation going on? Do you have any concerns working in this type of environment? Because you are, subject to possibly becoming at risk for, for COVID. So we ask those types of questions versus the other types of, have you worked remotely before?
These are really good questions to ask during this time. But we did that with when we had the transition from going remote to coming back. We sent out a survey to our employees to see what their comfort level was, because that was important to do, just to make sure to see what the response for that was. And thank you. And then Angela?
Ours is more equipment based. So we need them to have certain Wi-Fi speeds or internet speeds, or you're going to need a laptop, or are we going to need to provide one for you, kind of just to get an idea of, is it possible for you to work remotely? Or we even ask, we're on voluntary telework right now. So would you want us to build out a space for you in the office? Would that be something you're comfortable with? And similar to training, our newer engineers are going to need time in the office. So are you comfortable for the first 3 months to be one-on-one with your trainer and to come into the office every day? Because that's just kind of the supervision that you're going to need. But the equipment is a big one.
Right.
You gotta be able to work from home.
Making sure they can is going to be huge. And then I like the flexibility that you guys are offering. That's really nice.
It's been amazing.
Right. That's good. And Chekesha?
Sure. So we're not necessarily asking any additional questions on an interview panel, but once individuals are recommended for hire, that's when, we need to be able to verify if they have Wi-Fi access. We provide them with their equipment, so we need to make sure that they're able to connect remotely to get onto our shared drives and so forth. But for the most part, it's more so sharing information on what we're doing to keep employees safe and informing them that their position may work remotely and may also be required to go into the building, potentially, depending on the position type. Again, we have non-essential positions, we have essential and essential as needed. So it's, for the most part, sharing information so that employees are very much informed of what it is that they're getting into by accepting a position with the school system.
That's great. Yeah, I think overall, just during this whole thing, communicating has been like key to get, your employees settled, to get management, just to put the new rules out and regulations and everything. And then for new employees coming in, making sure they're aware of everything that's happening, if it is remote, if it's in office and so forth. So thank you so much for all those answers. I know Joan is about to put up the contact information for each of you for your email addresses. So Joan, you can put that up now if you would like. Is there anything else anybody wants to say before we close any of our panelists? Is there any key information you want to say? One last tip? Anything you forgot to mention throughout? Now is your time.
I think
Okay.
I'm good. I just want to thank you all for allowing us to participate. It's been great to communicate and share information.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Great. And now that we all know each other, if you all need somebody to interact with, please reach out to me. I will happily send you an email. We can FaceTime, we can Zoom, we can discuss our situations across Zoom. That's fine. All right, thank you. So here's the last. We just want to thank you all so much. Thank you so much, all of our panelists, for taking the time this evening to join us and answer some questions and have this discussion. It was great. This is only our second webinar we've done so far for the Financial Wellness First. So we're really excited to get this up and running and started. We have 2 more that are coming in December. So on December 2nd at 6:30 to 7:30, we will be having holiday appetizers on a budget. And then on December 16th at 6:30, we are going to have Ask the Experts questions about your pets. We'll be joined with Maryland SPCA. So that should be fun. If you have pets, you should really attend. And also, again, I want to thank all of our audience that registered and joined us tonight. Thank you so much. And please come back to our future webinars and just keep looking at our social media, our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram for further events that are happening. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. I hope you all enjoy your night, and I can't thank you enough. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.